They say the greatest form of flattery is, of course, imitation. And that is the route Red Bull have decided to take with their RB21, as they've looked to copy McLaren's unique front brake systems on their MCL39. And Red Bull want to have this produced and on the car in time for next month's Imola Grand Prix in Italy. Now, this is an unprecedented move for the likes of the Milton Keynes squad, as they are generally the team which is always having pieces of their cars copied by others. But this time, the tables have been turned, and it is the Milton Keynes squad which is doing the copying. And of course, this being the final year of this current regulation cycle within Formula One also showcases the importance that they've placed on this piece of tech from the McLaren car, not only to get it on the car this season, but also for future seasons down the line. Because of course, this is a piece of technology once you get a complete understanding on, you can replicate for future seasons. And of course, along with all of the upgrade packages Red Bull have in the pipeline, we have the major technical change which will be coming in place for the Spanish Grand Prix in Barcelona. And Red Bull expect all of these things to help them dramatically close the gap to F1's leading team in 2025, which is of course McLaren. Now, before we jump a little bit further into fully explaining this brake system, I just want to give a big thanks to everyone that's been subscribing to the channel recently, enjoying the content, leaving likes and comments here. And if you've enjoyed this video thus far, do hit the subscribe button and join us here on F1 Unraveled. Right, let's explain this McLaren brake system. Now, what exactly is this McLaren brake system that we're talking about here, and how does it help the team to manage the thermal tyre temps in a better manner than all of the rest of the field? Essentially, we need to break down the brake system on an F1 car into 3 sections. The first is the different parts that make up the entirety of the system. These parts include the brake caliper, brake discs, brake pad and bow. Now, all of these parts need their own protective housing for both performance and safety management. And of course, more importantly to this video is how this layer of protective housing for each part of the brake system helps cool the surrounding components as well as that individual part. For example, the brake caliper reaches temps of 210 degrees, while the brake discs maxes out at 1200 degrees, and that has on itself 1000 ventilation holes across its surface. Now, all this heat has to go somewhere naturally, right? And that's where this protective shielding does come into play. Now, back to McLaren's system on their 2025 car, and from the looks of it, it seems they have an additional level of cooling within these individual parts. And it is all to do with the ducts that they're taking the air from outside of the car through and directing it into these separate areas. And this is highlighted on the screen right now. And it doesn't stop there. There is also more than likely another intermediate level of cooling that this protective housing between the protective housing and the cake tin, which is the final piece which is on like the real hub from which the tires go on as they head out on track. And that is more than likely also receiving this air as well, adding an additional level of cooling to this overall system. Now, of course, the McLaren engineers would have been running hundreds, if not thousands, of experiments and simulations to see just how much air would be needed to keep everything within the working parameters or the working window that they need on their respective car. And this is what the whole system is about. And another question you do have to ask yourself is, will they be able to make this clever innovation work to the same degree McLaren have? Now, I think the jury will be forever out on that, at least until we get to see Red Bull trial this system out in Imola in practice sessions and more than likely in the race. Only then will they know, and then potentially us know, whether their system has worked in the same way. But I would not be fully surprised, and I expect Red Bull to be able to replicate their own version that will work identically to that of McLaren's, particularly as this really isn't the most complex piece of a ground effect era Formula 1 car to have a look at, study and replicate. Now, how is this all going to help Red Bull in race situations? Because of course this is the name of the game. It's about getting it on the car and to make use of it, take advantage of it when it comes to race situations. Well, there are two differing ways through which it will help, and these are all about the conditions that we will be facing, or the teams will be facing, when it comes to Grand Prix. So of course one of those is interchangeable conditions, when we're going from a wet, damp track to a drying track. And then second of all, when we go to the extreme heat of other Formula 1 venues, such as we had last time out in Bahrain. And what this should do is help the Red Bull team, like it has McLaren, keep the thermal management under acceptable levels in terms of the temperature, because that is what this whole system is about. It enabled McLaren in Australia to be able to hit continuous lap times within the 1 minute 37s or 36s off the top of my head, while all the other teams were going over a second a lap slower because their tyres had gone out of the optimum working range in terms of temperatures. And McLaren, with this unique system, allowed themselves to be within this level that they have personally in terms of acceptance. And this enables them to have an expanded range of strategy decisions and choices they can make, because they can extend their stints a lot longer into a Grand Prix. They can see if there's weather on the radar, they can then preempt that and not have to make on the fly decisions, because they've got such a dramatic advantage in terms of thermal heat management. And it's something they used to great effect in Australia, of course, because they were able to keep the tyres in the optimum working window. The tyres weren't overheating, and as such they were going seconds a lap quicker than the rest of the field, opening that gap, opening a pit stop advantage over the field. And this is how it's going to help Red Bull extend their current gap over teams, as well as bridge the gap to McLaren. It will enable them to be able to have a wider variety of strategy calls to make in Grand Prix if they can get this onto their RB21 and make it work in the same manner. And of course this is transferable to when we go to the extreme heat of like races like Bahrain, Malaysia in the past, all the other hotter climates that Formula 1 goes to throughout the season, and it will pay dividends for them in those events over that of their competitors. Now, there is, of course, one area that this is going to have a negative impact on, and that is, of course, qualifying, because as we've seen with McLaren, particularly in Q1 and Q2, they have to do multiple push laps to get the tyre temps up into the correct working window. And that is something Red Bull have to make sure that they do not fall foul to, because I think they are going to have to change their strategy in Q1 and Q2 to match that of McLaren's and do multiple laps to get the temperatures into the tyres correctly. It's a small price to pay for a long-term gain when it comes to actual Grand Prix. So in closing, if Red Bull can get this system working on the RB21, it should be a game changer for the team in managing their thermal tyre temps in race situations, enabling them to run / preserve, as well as extend their tyre usage more than they currently are able to, thus opening up multiple new avenues for strategy calls in races. Well, that would be the case if cars were able to overtake each other in this season, which we've seen they are having a huge difficulty with currently. But anyway guys, that is where I'm going to wrap this video all up. I hope you've all enjoyed it. If you have to, of course, leave a like on this video and share this across social media. And if you're new and have enjoyed the content here on F1 Unraveled, do consider hitting that subscribe button and joining us all here. Alright everyone, I'll see you all over the Saudi Arabia Grand Prix weekend with some more Formula 1 content from it. Catch you all later.